Okay, we're going to vibe this out because I need to get on camera more. Heavy slow resistance training, HSR. If you've any interest in tendon stuff, whether that's for your own rehab or whatever it is, you'll have seen me talk about it. I'm going to go into it in a little bit more detail because it's one of the things that people struggle with the most in tendon rehab. I'm going to read this word for word because I don't have a teleprompter in front of me, so I'm going to use my notes. To change the mechanical properties of the tendon, stress must be applied to the tendon at a magnitude that causes sufficient strain. What that basically means is you have to lift heavy enough. But what constitutes as heavy enough, and how do we really establish that? Well, we're going to use repetition maximum, so 1RM, most people will have heard of it, 1RM, 3RM, 5RM. We're going to use percentage of repetition maximum as our quantification as to if we're lifting heavy enough. Now, the research would show a bit of a bandwidth as to what the successful percentage is. It's been as low as 60% in some studies, and it's been as high as 90% plus in others. But general consensus around the research is that 70% is a good starting point. It's definitely not prescriptive, but it's a good starting point. Now, that also then would give us an indication on the rep ranges that we're going to need to use, because a lot of people get their rep ranges too high and then the intensity of the loading goes down as well. So in and around that 6 maximum rep range is a good place to go. So in and around 70% for 6 reps. Again, that's not prescriptive, but it's just a good starting point. And if you're working with a good professional, they'll be able to iterate and evaluate your success then from there. Not only is the loading important, but the rate of loading is important. And what that basically means is if your contractions are too fast, you're going to get an elastic response from the tendon. You're not going to get enough strain, and you're not going to get the adaptation that we're after. A pissed off tendon hates rapid contractions as well. So definitely need to control the speed of contractions. And I think that's where the eccentric bias in the research has come from, really, because we know that we don't want to rapidly load the tendon. So that's where the bias on eccentric only rehab programs really, I think, has come from, and that we want to control the speed of contraction. However, if the eccentric contraction is drawn out for too long, which in a lot of rehab programs it seems to be 6 seconds to 10 seconds. That's a long time for a lowering phase, and that will then limit your overall loading. So you get the slow contraction, but you don't get a heavy enough contraction. I think that's where the heavy slow resistance style of training really merges the two together, and I think that's why it's so successful, is we're able to get those heavy lifts, but we're also able to cue a slower contraction. And again, if you're working with a good coach, that will be something that they'll cue, is a good controlled slow contraction, so that we get that control of rate of loading, but we also get the overall loading. And it's also important to consider isolation exercises as well in this. Compound exercises are great, but isolation exercises can really apply stress to that tendon. So, for example, if I'm doing a patellar tendon rehab, using a leg extension is a great option. Single leg extension is a great option to load heavy using those prescriptions and getting enough stress on that patellar tendon. So hopefully that covers it. Obviously there's a lot more to it than that, but that's just a quick overview of heavy slow resistance training.